This show is not intended for the politically correct or the closed-minded. Enter at the risk of opening your eyes. You have been warned.
Why does the media attack an issue? To get primetime ratings?
In my line of work, you got to keep repeating things over and over and over again for the truth to sink in.
The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
A moment comes when we step out from the old to the new, and when the soul of a nation, long suppressed, finds utterance.
The kind of catapult to propaganda.
You are listening to Open Eyes with your host, Ira Robinson. From the normal to the paranormal, from government cover-ups to the depths of our consciousness, we aim to explore all things. From the dawn of prehistory to current events, no topic is forbidden and nothing remains hidden.
No more secrets.
Open your eyes and open your mind to the fact that life as we know it is not as we have been taught. Join us at LateNightInTheMidlands.com or OpenEyesNetwork.com as we take this brief journey through the depths of the cosmos and explore what it really means to be human.
Many peoples have sacrificed their liberties, only to learn to their sorrow that deceit and mockery, poverty and tyranny are their reward.
Whether you're online or offline, intercontinental or intergalactic, hello and welcome to Open Eyes. It is Friday, we are live and in person with you, and we've got a really great show in store for you tonight. I've been so looking forward to this for weeks and weeks. Just an amazing guest that I've got coming on. We'll get her on here in just a moment. Since we are live streaming onto YouTube over at youtube.com/C/Open Eyes Network. Facebook.com/Open Eyes Network. We've been over there for a couple of weeks and really enjoying our time with it. And as always, we're over in the audio streams, basically everywhere, YouTube or TuneIn, iTunes, boy, you name it, we're everywhere. So, and as always, we're over in the chat room at LNMRadioNetwork.com. Come on over and join in with us. And if you want to call in tonight, you can do so. The number is 260-494-3937. Our guest tonight is Jody Lynn Nye. And I'll tell you what, this is an amazing person. She's a great author. I love all of the stuff that she's done. I'm a huge fan, and I'm fangirling like crazy over here. So hopefully you guys will enjoy her too. Jody, welcome to the show. It's just great to have you with us.
Thank you, Ira. I'm really happy to be here.
So let's get started a little bit, giving everybody a little bit of info about yourself. Now, I've got a big bio for you here, and I got to say, I love the bio that you put onto your website, that your primary career is dealing with spoiled cats.
I spoil cats. I'm very good at it.
In my own bios on my books, we've got a cat named Elliot, and he's at the point in life where he thinks that I should not write and that I should just give him treats. That's all that I should be doing for him. So
you understand.
I do fully. But anyways, let's get you to give a little bit of your background, because I can read your bio, but I always figure the person that's the guest, they can tell their own bio a lot better than I can. So for those that haven't heard you before, why don't we, a little bit about yourself. What do you do? What are you involved with?
Well, I am a full-time writer. That's my job. I stopped working for other people, unless you consider working for publishers, other people, quite a long time ago now. I was the technical operations manager for a television station. And before that, I was a bookkeeping clerk. And I've been a semi-professional photographer, semi-professional calligrapher. And I've done the usual working in retail kinds of jobs. I worked for my grandmother, who had a costume and bridal shop. And she taught us all to sew starting when we were all very little. So we had any costume for Halloween that we wanted, if we could describe it to her. She was not huge on popular culture, so I kind of had to get pictures sometimes. And when I was about 11, she said, Well, you can have the costume that you're asking for, but you know how to do it by now. You make it and I'll help you. So, I'm part of a very creative family. We have movie makers, we have scientists, doctors, lawyers, accountants, musicians. My uncle writes and directs musical plays, and just all kinds of people who are very creative and focused on doing the best they can with I think the wonderful talents that they've been given.
That's
I hope
awesome.
that I can say that I'm right in there with the rest of them.
That's awesome. Well, I would say so. I love the work that you do myself. It's
Thank you.
I have gotten many years of entertainment out of it, to say the least. So, and my daughter, I'm getting her into reading it now too. So there you go.
Excellent.
You've got a new generation of people that are ready to read your stuff. So
All right.
well, so you got into writing in the 80s, right? That's when you first started publishing. Is that correct?
That is when I first started publishing,
Okay.
yes.
How did you start writing? I mean, have you been writing since you were a little girl, or?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I was telling stories before I could write. Had all sorts of make-believes, mostly my best friend and the eldest brother after me. I'm the oldest of four. We had these big pretends, and I was generally the one that said, well, we're going to be these things, and you're this one, and you're that one, and I'm this one. So it began very early, and I wrote my first book when I was about 6, out of my father's office paper, which I carefully illustrated and stapled together with his stapler. And I kind of hope it doesn't exist anymore. It was probably very, very silly. But I enjoyed doing that, and I always loved telling stories.
So you could have been with the stories that you were describing there. You could have either been a writer or a director and gone either direction, right?
Really, I did want to go into films. It just hasn't happened yet. But I went to film school. I went to USC and then transferred to Loyola University in Chicago. I was in the media department there, and I really thought that would be a great place to be. But writing came first. Opportunities to write were much more available than working in film.
With film now, one question I would have is have any of your books been done into film or TV shows yet? Or I don't think
Not
they
yet.
have they?
Not yet.
Yeah, I was going to say I didn't think
I've
they
had some
had.
approaches.
Would you be willing? That's the question. Would you be
Oh
willing?
yes, absolutely. I would be delighted to have that happen.
I was going to say, I know some authors that I've talked to, they actually don't want to see their writings turn into film, mainly because they've got their own little vision for it in their head, and to see it on film maybe would, warp that vision for themselves, I guess. But I don't know. For me, for my writings, I'd be like, heck yeah, jump on it, please.
That's a friend of mine had a really sane approach to that. Someone said to him, look what they've done to your book. And he said, book's up there. Book's fine. There's nothing wrong with my book. He didn't much like the movie, but he cashed the check and the money spent just fine.
It all spends equally, right?
Oh, yes.
That's a good way to look at it.
If the first movie is bad, if you have a long series that comes after that, the chances of having it remade are very poor. So you hope that whoever has taken on your option is somebody who's going to do the whole thing justice. And believe me, we ask careful questions. Money alone does not mean that you're going to be able to do it. My late writing partner, Anne McCaffrey, turned down a very, very, very large advance from a major studio, but they would not give her creative control. She took a deal instead from a smaller operation for half the money because they would give her creative control. Unfortunately, they ran out of money and were unable to continue. But she loved everything they did.
That's really cool. See, that's how I would want to be too, is to still allow me to have creative control, just to be able to say, okay, wait a minute, that's way, way far off from what I had in mind when I wrote this.
Oh yeah, one of the people who optioned her work wanted to have fire lizards that were not only in all the colors that she describes, but also purple, pink, and white, because that would look really, really cool on the shelves at Christmas.
Yeah, that would be a little bit of a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so with your writing now, I guess the best question that I could ask, as far as when you got started, you've been writing all along. Did you always want to be a professional writer, or did you just start it off as a hobby and you kind of went from there, like fell into it, or?
I suppose that you could call it that. I had been writing for myself for years. My best friend always said she could reach over into the back seat of my car where lots of my handwritten manuscripts were strewn, and she could find something that she would find interesting to read. And believe it or not, even though I have authors in the family, it never occurred to me that I could be one of the people writing the books I was reading. It took a very long time before that dawned on me. So I don't know why that was a blank spot. I really don't.
That's interesting. See, with me, I was writing from a really young age, and from about 10 or so on, I always knew that I wanted to do it as a career at some point, and just, life got in the way. I kind of fell away from it. I had some really dramatic issues that happened with people that I had, been married to, where they destroyed everything that I wrote, and that disheartened me for a long time.
That's
hard.
Done.
Yeah,
that's hard.
It is, and I think a lot of people that are creatives, they've gone through something similar to that, or at least most have had something like that. Whether it's like the works get lost in a fire, or lost in a move, or something like that. Something to that effect, and it's devastating when that happens. So it changed my heart for a little bit, and then as time has gone on, I said, no, I can't let that rule me, have gone from there, and have now published 8 books. So
wonderful. Yeah, you have to be true to your own vision. You really do, and you can't be true to anybody else's vision. Like David Gerald said, you have to be the best you can be. Everyone else is taken.
Exactly. Exactly. That's a great way to put it. Yep. So I guess one question I would say is, for you, and this is going to be an odd question, I know, but it's one that I ask for every writer that I have had on this show. Do you find writing to be hard, or is it pretty easy come, easy go for you?
I enjoy it. I don't find it difficult. There are times that I find difficult, of course. Revision is always tough. There are times when I look at something and say, I don't want to do that. But that's generally a hint that something is fundamentally wrong that I haven't figured out yet. But most of the time I love doing it.
I hate the editing process myself, especially the line editing process. I think probably some of that has to do with my vision problems, because I have to get so close to the screen to be able to really do anything with it. So my back starts hurting, my eyes are strained and hurting, and headache and all that kind of stuff. So it's like
increase the size of your text.
Well,
it's not
unfortunately that doesn't help very much, just because of the way that my vision works. But I get it as best as I can, and I can usually do a chapter or two a night before I really start getting too strained to be able to do it.
Actually,
anymore.
That's quite a lot. That's pretty good going.
Oh, is it? Okay. See, I didn't even know that. So
when you're doing editing, you're in a completely different headspace than you are writing. So once you start reading it critically, that means you have to hold all the threads in your head, and you have a lot of detail to go over. So it's not uncommon to do it in sections. Very few people want to go right through on an edit. It's exhausting.
It really is, yeah. I think editing in the long run seems to be a lot more effort than actually just writing that first draft can be, because the first draft, for me at least, comes really easily. I can just, it's done, And then it takes me about 3 months or so to go through the first edits.
Everybody has their own pace and their own way of operating, but in the end, if you come out of it with a readable manuscript, what does it matter?
Do you do your first edits yourself, or do you have somebody that does it for you?
No, I do. In fact, I edit while I'm writing. I know that most people don't. I had a friend say to me that she was kind of cross because she'd always been told not to do that, but it works for me. That after as many books as I've written, it's part of my process. So I do that. My husband is my first reader. When I'm really content with my draft, I hand it over to him. He's a wonderful editor. And after that, I do whatever changes are needed, and then I send it in.
See, you and I are kind of lucky with that, I think, because my wife is my first reader, and she does a lot of my editing for me. She's a great editor too. So I guess we both got kind of lucky with that, because I know a lot of authors out there. You know, a lot of authors, they're with spouses or girlfriends or boyfriends or whatever that actually don't support them in their writing career.
I know too many who have had situations like the ones you describe, where they openly try to sabotage you or destroy your work, or destroy the computer that you work on, or prevent you from having any time to concentrate. And I feel that's just dreadful. You know, you should support each other.
Yeah, it's such a negative energy to try to work yourself out of, to even get the writing done, let alone then all the energy that you expend when you're actually doing the creative process. It's a nightmare situation.
Yeah.
So we feel for you guys out there. We do.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah, I know definitely I'm lucky with that, especially again because of my vision problems. There's a lot of things that I tend to miss, you know, and so she kind of gets a laugh out of some of the ways that things come out of my fingers. So we like to make jokes with it, and it's a lot of fun to do it that way. But yeah, at the same time, she does such a great job with it. I've actually had a couple of editors that I've worked with that it was actually a much more difficult process, and the books that ended up coming out were not really that great compared to just having her do the editing for it, you know, so it works out pretty well, I guess.
And she also understands you, so she knows what you meant to bring out.
Sure.
And a professional that doesn't live with you won't know that.
Right, exactly. Yeah, there's that sort of empathic connection that goes on, and you get a real good flow of things together. So, yeah.
My husband has worked with so many authors and editors. He's packaged over 300 books. So he has a really great approach to it, knows the business very well. So I get a fairly sophisticated edit from him. And I think it works.
Now, publishing side of things.
Yes.
Have you had much difficulty publishing side of things, or have you had a pretty easy time with it since like your first publication? I mean, I know the first publish is always hard to say the least.
I think I've been very lucky. I really have. I have come into things that suited me. I worked with Mayfair Games in the very beginning. Bill was a partner at Mayfair Games, and I was doing game materials for them. But I was already a role-play gamer, had been for several years before we met. In fact, we had been at various games conventions at the same time, but never got together for many years after that, which was kind of funny. And the first project I worked on for books was the Crossroads Choose Your Own Adventure style books for Tor.
Oh, yeah, I remember those, yeah.
Yes, you've probably seen them. I did 4 of those. And because I knew gaming and because I knew writing, I was a candidate for that. Not everybody who writes knows gaming, and vice versa.
Right.
So that was almost perfect for me. After that, you know, science fiction is different from every other genre. You can actually get to know the editors. And I approached one that I had met, Brian Thompson, about my first fantasy novel. And in the end, he bought 3 of them from me. And he not only got along with me very well, he was a really empathic editor, and he was terrific to work with, and he just loved what I did. So I was very lucky. I know that a lot of people have tried to get their first book published. And, you know, before you knew it, I had, gosh, how many? 7 or 8 in the first couple of years of my career.
With the co-writing that you do too, I mean, you've done a lot of co-authorship with people, and some really great people too. People like Anne McCaffrey, I imagine she must have been amazing to work with. She
was so giving. She was like everybody's mom in a way. That doesn't necessarily mean it was always an easy, because she also wanted us to excel. But she was marvelous. The first 2 books 2 of the first 4 books I did, the Crossroads books, were set on Pern. They were licensed products. So we had things that were set in Zelazny's Amber series and Christopher Stasheff's The Wizard in Spite of Himself, and Pern and Xanth. So I had to approach Anne with a plot that I had come up with for a teenage Master Robinson on his first journeyman assignment, which was to bend and hold. And I had to give her the plot that I was working on, but I also had to explain how a Choose Your Own Adventure works. So I made her a short manuscript that set Robinson as an adult on a little journey, and I showed her how the probability tree worked, and she found it very interesting and fortunately humorous. So she took me aside and she said, people are going to be very jealous that you are writing official Pern fiction, because she was admitting whatever I did to the canon, which is huge compliment.
Wow, yeah, definitely.
But she said, but people are going to be jealous. So you have to tell them, oh, that Anne McCaffrey, she's horrible. She's just terrible to work with. I'll never work with her again. Or you can tell them you're my daughter. I mean, what more could I ask?
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's definitely up there on the top of my list of favorite authors as well. I mean, the imaginative things that she came out with were just amazing.
I favorite of mine forever.
Yeah, definitely wonderful to say the least. With those writings that you did with her too, I mean, how closely involved was she with you with that? I mean, did you guys talk frequently about it all?
Oh, we did talk frequently. And this was, you have to remember that the first ones were before the internet really got started.
Right, yeah.
So we were sending manuscripts up and back by file transfer protocol, which is no fun.
No.
Because, the sound of a modem.
Yeah.
Kids today have no idea what we went through. So we were both on CompuServe, and we would send things up and back. We would send messages up and back, never knowing for certain that things had actually made it there. So we also talked long distance quite a bit. And we always came up with an outline. I would write the first draft. It would go to her for the second draft. It would come back to me for things that I do that she didn't do. And then the final draft was always hers. She was boss. But wonderful to work with. In fact, I just spent the last week with one of my co-collaborators. Several of us consider ourselves privileged to have been collaborating on projects like that with Anne, Elizabeth Moon, Mercedes Lackey, Margaret Ball, and I was with Steve S.M. Sterling and his wife for the last week. We went up to the Grand Canyon together. It was cool. And
he's great too.
He is great. He is great. So we all had a fairly similar experience of getting one of the very best in the business to look over our things and say, you should tweak this a little here, or haven't you brought this out? It gave me such a boost, both professionally and literarily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can definitely believe it. I will say, we're going to have to hit a break here in just a couple of minutes. But before we do, I just have to say, you so don't fit the normal author motif. I think a lot of people, when they think of writers, they think of these guys or women that are sequestered away in a dark room, cavernous kind of room, smoking cigarette after cigarette and half drunk and, all that kind of stuff. And, they get this image in their head and they think, well, a writer, in order to write, has to be tortured, this whole tortured artist kind of thing that people have in their mind. And I think a lot of people that start, off in the process of writing, they think that same way too. And you don't fit that model at all. It's kind of like me too. I mean, I'm like the happiest person you can know, even in spite of everything that goes on, But I like that about you, because you don't fit that motif with it all,
I'm just very lucky, and I do have my sort of hiding away in a cave behaviors, because that's the only way you can really get work done. You must concentrate. You must have a way to shut out the world. And I just have found my way. I like things quiet. I don't work with music. The cat comes in and demands his attention, so he flops on his side, and I have to pet his belly. But other than that, my husband and I both work in the house, so we've come to terms about how our processes work for each other.
So you guys have found a way to work together, being apart.
By necessity. There were times before Bill figured out that interrupting me really meant interrupting me, and it's very hard to get back to it.
Yeah.
When cordless phones became so prevalent, because he walks while he talks.
I'm guilty of that too.
Yeah, I don't even have to fill in the rest of that sentence.
I'm a pacer. Yep, indeed. Well, let's go ahead and hit a break here real quick. And when we come back, I've got a couple of questions that have come in from our various chat rooms for you already. So we'll go ahead and hit those and get into some more conversation. How's that sound to you?
Excellent. Thank you.
Awesome. If you guys want to call in tonight, you can do so. The number is 260-494-3937. Our Skype line is JDA Film. And as always, you can reach us over in the chat room at lnmradionetwork.com. Don't forget as well, you guys can check out my books if you want to, originalworlds.com. That's my website with all of my different author stuff. And I've got a lot of writing help, writing tips and advice and all of that kind of good stuff for you. And I know that Jody has done that kind of thing too. We'll get into that maybe in a little while as well. Stick around, folks. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
Open Eyes looks for the truth in all things, no matter where it may lead. Whether it is the paranormal, government cover-ups, the dark agenda that the puppet masters are bringing to this world, or aliens and UFOs, no subject is taboo or off limits. Listen to Open Eyes Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays on the L&M Network at latenightinthe.midlands.com or openeyesnetwork.com starting at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Open hearts, open minds, open eyes. To hide the truth once you know it makes you think that you are better than everyone else. It makes you into the type of person who says, "Ooh, I have a secret," but you're not ready to hear it yet. However, for $39.95, I'll let you in on the secret. You'll lead the people to the promised land for the cheap price of 3 easy payments of 1/3 of their soul apiece. Tragic devastation drove them underground. Abject desperation brought them back out again. Their world had changed. Alien creatures greeted them with misery in tow and enslavement in mind. Into this world a girl was born. Made mute by a mistake of birth, Aylin's inability to communicate with others of her kind was absolute. But natural things, animals, trees, the softly creeping things in the night, were open to her and had many things to teach her, including how to save her world from those beings that held her people in thrall. Aylin's first Silent Steps are just the beginning. Silent Steps is the first book in the Tikik Cycle trilogy. Aylin is a young girl caught in a world that she is unable to communicate with, trapped between her people and the monstrous creatures that enslave them. With each step she takes, she comes ever closer to her destiny. Aylin has been thrust into the center of a power play for the control of her people, swept into a tide of events that will change the face of her planet forever. Purchase Silent Steps now at any major retailer worldwide or online at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or Neely Worldwide Publishing. You can also order a signed copy at Ira Robinson's website, originalworlds.com.
Why subscribe to Late Night in the Midlands, you ask? Well, I'll tell you why. Late Night in the Midlands covers everything, and through the thousands of expert guests who have joined Michael Vera on his show, come pieces of the big puzzle, which started many years ago. Michael and his guests reveal information dating back to the beginning of time. To this very moment, Michael Vera not only brings you the best guests with the best information, but Michael is not afraid to call out those who are less than honest. You see, in this day and age, we need a radio show we can count on and a radio host we can trust to expose the truth one show at a time. So become a late nighter and subscribe now. Talk radio like no other. Late Night in the Midlands, bringing the truth back to talk radio.
Have you heard about Show Us, Don't Tell Us? It's a 3-hour program with Mike Bayhouse, Skills, also known as Barry, and myself, Papa Bear. We go over various subjects, mostly news items, and bring in guests to cover all kinds of things like paranormal activities, legal codes and laws, banking, and whatever we can to give you insight into what you might want to know. We're on every Monday night from 9 p.m. Pacific or 10 p.m. Mountain, 11 Central, or midnight Eastern on the LNM Radio Network. Listen live and chat at lnmradionetwork.com or latenightinthemidlands.com.
Welcome back to Open Eyes. My name is Ira Robinson. Tonight we're joined by my guest, Jody Lynn Nye. And I'll tell you what, this is great. Love this woman. She's awesome and just a great writer. Hopefully you guys will check her out. I'm definitely going to have her give a chance to give her website and all that good info out here in just a moment. But if you want to call in and ask any questions or give any comments or anything along those lines, you can do so. The number is 260-494-3937. We're over in the chat room at lnmradionetwork.com. We're also looking at Facebook comments on the Facebook Live, facebook.com/Open Eyes Network, and YouTube, the YouTube chat as well, youtube.com/C/Open Eyes Network. But we are back, Jody. And if you don't mind, before we go any further, I definitely want to give you a chance to give out your website information, where people can find your books, all that kind of good stuff.
Okay. Well, my website is jodylynnye.com. That's 3 N's, 3 Y's, JODYLYNNNYE.com. So take a look there. I have a whole gallery of my covers, and all of the books have, I hope by now, all of them have excerpts on them so you can see what's in each one. And I'm on Facebook at Jody Lynn Nye, LYNNNYE, and I tweet also at the same name. So I've got an Amazon page, which I have to admit I don't keep up very well. I'm on Goodreads, and I come to conventions, so you can frequently find me at cons, and I'll talk to anybody.
That's awesome. So there you guys go. Make sure you guys check her out, and you've got a new book that's coming out now too, right?
That's right. That's right. On July 4th.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Young adult science fiction from Baen Books with Travis Taylor, who is a real rocket scientist. So the science is accurate, and we have 6 wonderful young people on the moon doing science.
Now that sounds really good.
It's called Moonbeam.
Moonbeam. Okay, let me make sure I put up the cover for everybody here for a moment. So there you guys go. Moonbeam. So it's geared towards young adults then, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, but anybody can read it and enjoy it.
So what was it like working with somebody who's not normally an author?
He is actually an author. He's a Baen author just like I am.
Oh, is he? Okay.
Yes. We met at a Baen Books party, and we hit it off, started immediately talking about ideas that we had for young adult fiction, because he had always wanted to write some too. We came up with a wonderful outline. We filled it all in as much as we could in the space of about an hour, and presented it to our publisher on the spot.
So it was kind of one of those wonderful spur of the moment creative things then.
Yes,
that's awesome.
It was actually the second time that we'd met, but we both had very similar ideas about where we wanted to go on something like that. So it turned out to be very good. The first book is, like I said, just about to come out. The second book is underway, and we have proposals in for more. to the publisher right now.
Amazing. That's awesome. So definitely you guys check that out. You said that's July 4th, right?
July the 4th. It's got a great cover, as you can see on the webpage, and really love what they've done with it. There are also some internal illustrations, and I think that you're going to like the kids. Our point of view character is a young woman from Iowa, just a farm girl, but she has been interested in science all her life, and she's very good at getting things done. But she gets in with other kids who are just as bright, who come from all over, and they all have different ideas about what they want to do, but what they're really good at is working together.
I like that. That's a really good concept. So is there your standard humor in this book as well, or?
A little bit. There's more adventure in this one. I think we're going to be adding more humor as we go. The first story is kind of serious. They are building a telescope out of a crater on the moon, something that is actually possible, and NASA has talked about doing that. But while they are there, a coronal mass ejection, which is what happens when a sunspot bursts, and it sends a hank of radiation out in the direction that the sunspot burst, which in this case happens to be toward the moon and Earth. So they have to figure out a way to survive and take care of themselves and deal with the stress of being alone on the other side of the moon. So it's quite an adventure, but there are touches of humor here and there.
So that actually fits in with what's really trending today, popular today. There's a lot of video games that are geared towards like survival type of situations. I know survival horror is a big one right now as well, but there's quite a few now that are coming out where it's survival with colonies on different planets and that kind of thing too. So it fits right in with the trending of what's going on in the video game industry as well. Kind of going back to what you were saying earlier about working in the gaming type of things as well. So
we actually started working on this before The Martian came out.
Aha.
And ours is in a way like The Martian, also a positive kind of story. So many of the things you're talking about are dystopic.
Yes,
where everybody dies.
Or you're the lone survivor or something like that. Yep.
Right. Yes, where you have to figure out. And by the way, potatoes was probably not the best crop. But we're trying to give people, young people especially, an idea that science is for them. That all of these wonderful projects could be theirs. They could have a real stake in it and make their own ideas come to life.
Exactly.
So
that's
one of the reasons. And we want positive fiction out there for kids.
Yes, I was just about ready to say that. That's something that seems to be like against the way that things are right now with young fiction is that it seems like so much of it is geared towards, that negative energy type of motif, I guess you could say. And I don't care for that too much,
I don't care for it either, but I understand where it's coming from.
Yeah.
Kids need to be needed. They want to be able to do their best. They want to have someone call upon them and say, only you can fix this. Only you can be the one who can succeed and save us all. So instead of saying, this is all horrible and everybody is going to die and all is lost, in this case, it's, how can we make this work? How can we survive this? And how can we get out of it in a positive fashion?
There you go. Exactly. I like the fact that young fiction is really, I guess you could say, coming to a big head. There's a lot of it that's coming out there. A lot of it has been coming out over the past 10 years or so. And it seems like there's been this glut of it, and I like that because we need the youth to read more,
we need to
really
get involved in science too. We are falling behind the United States as a country.
Yep.
In terms of being interested in the STEM disciplines. And really that's doing no service to either the world or the kids or the country.
You're absolutely correct. And that's something that I like to see happening is books like yours, this one that's coming out, it ties right into exactly doing that. That's great. I love it wonderful idea.
Thank you.
So, speaking of co-authorship, now that's something that I've never gotten into. I've never done a co-authorship with anybody. So as somebody who's experienced a lot of it, what do you think of it? Obviously you like it because you've done so much of it. You wouldn't be doing it if you didn't at least like it at least somewhat, right?
Yeah.
Is it a really difficult process compared to when you write solo, or is it somewhat okay?
I think just the opposite. When I'm working with somebody else, I tend to write faster than I do on my own because I only have myself to please. So instead of making a detailed outline, which I would not do for myself, you have to lay down the story so that each of you knows exactly where you're going. And I think the primary thing is to find somebody that you respect, that you want to work with. You don't have to like them. There are a couple of legendary science fiction pairings that don't really get along with each other terribly well, but they work brilliantly together because they respect one another. You have to be prepared to do 100% of the work if it's necessary. But you have to trust your co-author and let them have their leeway. If they're doing something that you don't really like, you have to be able to discuss it and come out with a solution that serves the story more than it serves you. And that's kind of tough. Sometimes it's hard to let go of. As writers, as creators, we're used to making our own worlds.
Sure, we
and
have
we're used
we
to
have
making
big
our
egos
rules.
with it. Yeah. We definitely have our egos when it comes to this type of stuff sometimes, I think.
Oh yeah.
Because it's what we created. It's our brainchild, these
It's our baby.
Exactly. Exactly. For me, I don't know if I'd ever co-author myself. I'm wondering, when you co-author, do you guys set out to have sort of the same writing style in mind, or does that come out as far as with editors go? Do they kind of make it so that the writing styles mesh together? Because obviously when you're working with somebody else, everybody has their own voice with the stuff.
That has mostly been my function.
Okay.
When I was working with Anne McCaffrey, I'm a good mimic. So my job was to make certain that my style was as close to hers as possible. And apparently I've done a good job because people keep saying, oh, well, I know which sections Anne wrote and which sections you wrote. And I said, sure, show me. And they can't. Apart from a few word choices Anne had that she would point out to me, I wouldn't use this word here, I would use this one. And it's, noted. And that's fine. So clean up, smoothing it out is something that I do.
Gotcha.
When I was working with Robert Asprin, same thing. We worked on so many books together, 8 in all. And I think that I've carried on pretty well. Understand the way that Bob thought and Bob's style.
I was going to say, by that time, by the time even a second or third book has come around, when you're co-authoring with somebody, I'm sure that you know their style pretty much, to the bone, I guess you could say.
You could be oblivious to it too. I've read things where it was clear that somebody wrote this section and someone wrote that section, and that's fine. If they were happy with the way it came out, that's okay. But I like it blended pretty seamlessly. That's
the way I would be too. I think my OCD would kick in, and no, I can't handle seeing it like that. Just the way I am. I don't know. With writing now, okay. I did have a question that came in from the chat, and somebody wanted me to ask you this. So let's see what you think here. Out of the stuff that you've written, now you've published what, 40 plus books at this point, right?
50 plus, but
oh geez, 50 plus. Okay, so I'm a little behind. So okay, so out of 50 plus books that you've written, hundreds of short stories, what would you say is your favorite story that you've written?
Oh, no can do. I can tell you ones that have been popular with other people. When I have read at conventions, I unlike some people, I like to give the listeners a choice. So if I have time, I have a list of stories that fit into either half an hour or an hour. And I say, here, you can listen to this one, which is about a supernatural dating service, or you can listen to this one about a high-rise where aliens land looking for the most important person in the world, or you could listen to this one about a civic-minded black cat. And believe me, that one gets chosen almost all the time.
I was going to say, there's your cat love again, right?
Oh, absolutely. But it's a good story, too. It's called Superstition.
That's cool. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
So you love your brain children equally then, huh?
I do. There are some that are misunderstood. There are some that were a little harder to love than others, but on the whole, I'm happy I wrote them, and I'm happy to go back over them again. And you've probably experienced this yourself, going back over something and say, "Woo, that wasn't bad."
Yeah. Yeah, I love it when that happens, because that's what really gives you another like push, a force to be like, okay, yes, I want to write again. I'm sitting down, I'm doing it again, you know?
Yep. Well, you have to be able to face the computer again and say, I've got to do another story, or I have to do the next chapter. And if you really hate it, if you're really scared of it, nothing's going to happen. You have to loosen up.
Exactly. Do you prefer writing in fantasy or science fiction more?
Either way.
Or do you like it either way?
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. That's cool. See, I'm kind of that same way myself. And in fact, a lot of my books that I've written, they've ended up blending both science fiction and fantasy together. There's like science fiction elements to my fantasy stories, and there's science fiction elements to my fantasy stories. So,
well, those are science fiction tropes. If you add a fantasy element to it, it's fantasy.
Yeah. This is true. This is true. With sci-fi, do you like to I guess you could say do more of the hard science fiction into your writings, more than just, sci-fi elements, aliens and that kind of thing in it? Or, do you focus on doing like hard sci-fi as well?
I'm learning hard science fiction, especially working with Travis. But when I put in a science element, that has to be at the heart of your story, because otherwise it's just a tale that could be told anywhere. If it doesn't have a real science fiction element at the heart of your story, you don't have a science fiction story.
Right.
So, yeah, I do my best to keep it accurate. The things I fudge on are the usual things that many people fudge on, like faster than light drive, which for years NASA said wasn't possible. I listened to a lecture by Dr. Robert L. Forward, who worked for NASA for many years, and he was saying, we're never going to be able to crack that. Well, very recently, the last few years, they're starting to say wormholes are a thing, and it's possible that we might be able to harness them to move gigantic distances. Although I don't want to be in the first one that goes into a wormhole to see where it comes out. But nevertheless, we're probably going to do that with probes of some kind sooner or later.
That would be a hard volunteership.
That would be great.
That would definitely be a hard volunteership, that's for sure.
Well, actually, there are plenty of people who would do it in a minute. Elon Musk has a list of volunteers who are willing to go to Mars, even though they know they will probably die.
That is true. That is true. Isn't his list upwards of like 10,000 or something like that of people that want to do it? And
I think it would be unethical to send anyone to Mars before you have a way of getting them back.
Yes, I agree there.
But I can understand the love of the adventure and the wanting to be involved in something that fantastic. I'd love to go to space, but I don't know if that will ever happen. When I was a kid, my skull was fractured, and we were in a car accident, and I don't know if they could qualify me, but I would love to do it if I can.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But with hard sciences, there's elements of that in my books already. My Lord Thomas Conago books have very important elements about genetics, and I put in a secondary science fiction element in each of those on top of that one. So that's always important at the end.
That is cool. That is cool. We do have a call that's coming in. I want to go ahead and bring them in here real quick. I do believe this is either Daryl or Katie. I'm not sure which.
It is.
It is a Daryl. Hi,
Daryl.
What's on your mind, Daryl?
Okay, I got a little one chasing me around, but I got a question for Jody Lynn because I love her writing.
Oh, thank
you. In her book, The Dragon Lover's Guide to Pern.
Yes.
You were. I loved it. I'm sorry. I have to admit, I loved it. What was your inspiration for writing that novel?
That's not The Dragon Lover's Guide to Pern is not a novel. It's really sort of like a description of the world, like a photo's guide to Pern.
Right.
Right. Well, my husband, Bill Fawcett, who is a book packager, among other things, had done 2 previous guides to existing fantasy and science fiction worlds. He did Guide to Castle Amber, Roger Zelazny's world, and the Guide to Xanth, Piers Anthony's Xanth. Heavily illustrated, really beautiful, well received, but we went to Del Rey and said, we could do this for you too. And at first they didn't want it. And of course, I had been working with Anne for a long time by then. Love her very much. And it seemed a natural thing that her fans would be interested in having background information about the world. So that's really the inspiration. The story of Feleson having his impression was kind of a bonus on top of that. We talked it over and we agreed that I could write a short story to go into it, to describe what it's like for somebody to impress.
Because when I was looking at it, I thought it connected to other stories as well. I mean,
yes.
There was and the style of writing, I have to say, I'm a Feist fan, okay? And it reminded me of a Feist-type novel.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I've known Ray a really long time.
He's one of my favorites, too. I love that guy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have to admit that Miss Nye here is probably, well, I have to say, Ira is probably one of your greatest fans. But on the other side, yes, we love your work, and we cannot wait for your new book to come out on July 4th.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
God, you're just the greatest. I mean, you're such an inspiration, and you're inspiration as a writer for the youth out there as well. And
well,
I got to
thank
you for that.
I very much appreciate you calling. Thank you.
I just have to add in here, too. I have that illustrated guide to Xanth myself. The Xanth series is definitely way up on the top of my list as far as favorite book series goes. I love how Piers did everything with it. And that illustrated guide is just fantastic. I love it. So kudos.
Todd Hamilton did such a fantastic job on the art.
Yes.
Beautiful stuff.
Yes, absolutely. Daryl, thank you for calling in. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Daryl.
Hopefully you guys have a great night over there, and don't let the kids take you over. They got two little ones there that are just a little crazy, just a little crazy. But he and his wife actually they're my publishers, so
cool.
It's great to have them call in with it. Mm-hmm. So speaking of stories, now everybody seems to have a different way of doing things, and I like to ask authors how they like to sit and write. So my first question regarding that kind of thing is, do you have like a certain set of rituals or something like that that you do before you sit down to actually do your writing in the day?
Of course, many things have come into my life. I must light candles. I must invoke the Great Spirit. No, pretty much I get up, I feed the cat, I make cocoa, and I sit down. I'm currently writing on a couch. I pick up my laptop, put it on my lap, and I get to work. So
nothing really
I suppose
special.
It would be fun to have a lot of rituals, but that could really hold you back if one of your elements is not available.
Yes, it really could. Now, for me, I have, I guess you could say the only thing with me is I have a device that I use to write with. It's I don't know if you've heard of it or not. It's the FreeWrite. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
Okay.
No.
It's a new device that came out here a couple of years ago from a Kickstarter campaign. And it's sort of an old-fashioned keyboard with a modern take. It's got the old-fashioned keys to it, but it's got an e-ink screen on it, so like the ebook readers, and a mechanical keyboard with it, and it saves all the data to the cloud. The thing that I like with it is, number one, it saves the data, so I don't have to worry about it. My stories disappearing or something like that. Mm-hmm. Again, going back to the devastations that I had in previous times, it's much more comfortable in my heart to know I've got this thing saved in like 5 different places out there on the internet, plus emailed to me and automatically stored on my hard drive. So if something happens,
that sounds good.
Yeah, I've got it backed
useful
up.
Thing.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
I save things to a thumb drive. I save things to Dropbox, and of course, it's already on the hard drive. So I make sure that things do not go away, but have to be very careful not to overlay the old draft on top of the new draft.
Yes.
That is the one place where you can go really wrong.
Really quickly. To say the least. Do you use a particular word processing software?
Oh, I'm using Word.
Okay.
The one I really miss is AppleWorks, which was on the Apple, not on the Mac, but just on the Apple. It was bulletproof. Everything was two-letter commands. It was the easiest word processor in the world, and it never failed on me. But I stopped working on AppleWorks very abruptly when Jim Bain got in touch with my husband. He had been translating my files all along, And finally, he called up my husband and said, I can't find anyone to translate her files anymore because Word and the typesetting programs had moved on. He said, she moves to a PC tomorrow. So we went out looking for a computer, and I switched over. And I did find somebody who could translate my files up to that version of DOS. And so I've been on a PC ever since.
Gotcha. I use Scrivener.
Word is okay.
I use Scrivener.
Scrivener?
Yeah, that's a really good program. I really recommend it to people out there. I've known a couple of people that have been looking for different word processor programs, and that one's a really good one. I like it because it you can do your outlining and everything right there in there, and you don't have to worry about trying to search out different documents and stuff. It's all right there at the click of a button. So it makes it really nice and easy for me. Again, because of the visual issues, the less I have to do to click, the better off I am, to say the least.
Yeah. I've had people tell me they love Scrivener. I'm just so used to Word that it's invisible to me now.
I used it to actually to write let's see, one novel, and I've done a whole slew of short stories on Word. But the version of it that I had, my computer ended up doing a reset on me, and I couldn't get it back. For some reason, the disc was gone. I have no idea where. And of course, if I wanted to do it again, I'd have to pay another $100+ to get the whole suite and all that kind of good stuff. But didn't want to bother with it, so I just figured go with the $20 Scrivener program and work from there.
Yeah.
And it's been good. When you're broke, you have to do what you can do, right?
Oh, yeah. Yes, absolutely. You go with whatever you could have available to you.
Yep, exactly. So you do everything on the laptop. Did you start off doing handwriting, or do you still do that once in a while?
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. And not only handwritten, but occasionally the notes function on my iPhone. I will get an idea for a story or a book, and I'll open a note and put all the information I can think of into one of those. And then I use that as the basis for whatever I thought of. And let's see, I also have a little voice recorder. I used to try to take notes on a little notebook when I was driving, and the little tape recorder seemed to be a much better idea because it involves less traffic accidents.
This is true. This is true. Speaking of that, have you ever tried to do the text-to-speech or the speech-to-text kind of programs to do writing with?
I really want to get into Dragon Naturally Speaking. David Weber's been using it for years.
I tried using it. I think it worked okay. The program itself is excellent. I mean, it really is great for getting the words out. My issue is I'm so much more flowery when I write than when I speak.
It's a different thing. I am actually good at narrating things, and by the time I get going, it's as if I were typing it. Once on a trip to Minnesota and back again, I wrote 2 essays and a short story on the tape recorder, and I was really pleased about that. Sometimes when I cannot think of what I'm doing, I go out for a long drive. I had a really short deadline on a short story, and I drove to Iowa and back. I'm in Illinois. And by the time I got home, I had the plot all worked out. I didn't have the tape recorder at the time, so I still had to remember everything I thought of. But still, that kind of relaxation really opened things up for me.
Sure, I could see that. Definitely. I could definitely see that. For me, I don't know. Again, it's a different process when you're doing the speaking as opposed to the writing, because when you're writing, I think, at least for me, I don't know if it's this way for you, but at least for me, when I'm writing, I'm usually like a couple of sentences ahead of where my fingers actually are doing the typing. So it's like it gives my brain a chance to come up with a really good way to put it down or something like that.
Sure.
As opposed to just speaking, you can't really think ahead that much with it as well.
On the other hand, the idea is to get it down and you can revise it later.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. Whichever way is best to get the words out. I mean, I would say it's great that you say that, because for me, a lot of people have asked me my writing advice over the years, and on my website, I've set up myself to, give writing advice and prompts and that kind of thing to help out new authors that are out there. And So when they ask me, what to do this, how to do that kind of thing, I'm like, just write. I mean, just put the words down, and yes, they're going to suck. The first draft always sucks. That's the point of it being a first draft. You just get the words out, and then you can do the actual, flowery or adding in a few sentences to make things clear later. There's no issue with that, but you just want to get those ideas.
You have to do it when you think of it,
Sure.
because you're going to lose so much detail if you try to maintain it for later. Get it down while you think of it.
Exactly. And you're never going to publish your first draft. I mean, I don't think anybody's ever published their first draft before. It's not going to happen. So, you've got time to edit and make it better later. There's no problem there. So that would be a question for you. How good are your first drafts?
Actually, they're pretty good.
Are they? Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
It is.
But you've been at it a while too, so.
Yes, I have. It's been quite a lot of years now. And I'm still learning. Every single time I write something, I learn something new. And I think it was Gene Wolfe who told me that by the time you finish a book, the thing that you know best is how to write that book. It doesn't really spill over into the next thing, except to make you more practiced at the process.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's a craft, it is actually a practice. And I always think of the brain, that writing mechanism as a muscle. The more you use it, the better it's going to be each next time that you sit down to do it. And that, by the time, like I've found, for instance, that by the time I've finished writing a novel, the end, few chapters are vastly different than the first chapters, because I'm learning more as the chapters go on and as the writing process goes on. It's like I can see it's a subtle difference, but for me, I can definitely see the difference. It's like, okay, I describe these things so much better.
The book you start is not the book you finish.
Sure, yeah.
So when you finish it, you have to go right around and rewrite the beginning.
To put it in the same voice that your end is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that's a really good way to put it. Story ideas, do they come easy to you? Do you have a pretty easy time getting ideas out, or do you find it hard to find ideas?
Too many. I think we all have that problem.
Yeah.
I could write this, and I could write this, and I could write this, and you have these deadlines, which you have to write the other things that you promised to do. So I don't know if I'll ever get to all the ones even the ones I really love. But I hope.
One day they will be there. Yeah. But you're a busy project anyways. I mean, you've got so much that goes on constantly. How many books do you publish a year? 2?
It depends. It really depends. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Usually it's about 2 a year. So I'm looking forward to seeing whatever that's going to be for next year and the year after that. Some things are planned long in advance. Some things are projects that sound like a really good idea when I start discussing them. Some wonderful things come up on the spur of the moment, and the publisher wants them. So I'm happy about that. But then there are projects that I would like to go back to, and that's a hard one when it's no longer in the hands of the original publisher. So I had a beloved editor, Brian Thompson, who left the house that my first fantasy series was published with. And his 2 replacements were content to bring out the books that followed that. But then they wanted to do their own projects and not continue with Brian's. I think that is fairly typical, that editors want to make their own marks. So the books are currently with Wordfire Press, Kevin J. Anderson and Rebecca Mesta's publishing house. And I could probably now continue the series if I want to. And the question, of course, is when?
When do you have time?
Exactly. In all my copious spare time, I usually say with a bitter laugh.
Exactly. Now, I guess, with doing 2+ books a year, I mean, would you want to try to do more than that? Or is that a pretty comfortable pace for you?
That's comfortable. I would like to do more, because I would like to have more of these ideas come to fruition. I have friends who publish many more books than 2 a year, and I admire that, but I don't know if that's going to work for me. I also have a lot of conventions I go to, and I have family, so I need to be involved with them. I have friends, and there are things that I want to do outside of just writing.
Do you think that it's a good idea to do a lot of books like that in quick succession? Or do you think, like fan base and that sort of thing wise, from an established author, what do you think about that? Do you think that coming out with a lot of books at once is a really good idea, or to pace yourself is a better idea?
I think I had a wonderful chat with a romance author named Jade Lee. And she said she publishes online. She publishes very frequently, like a novel every 3 months. At the same time, she is also putting out novellas and short stories and other content for her readers. So she is writing constantly. She is publishing constantly because her readers have come to expect that kind of pace. For some people, episodic fiction is the way to go for them. They're happy doing that. And I'm okay with writing more than one project at the same time, although I write in a linear fashion. I write beginning to end most of the time. And not everyone I know does that. It's harder to keep track of for me, but everyone has their own thing, of course. I don't know. I'm certainly trying. Right now I've got 4 projects going at once, plus a few short stories, and I find that I concentrate heavily on one at a time, even though I'm working on several at once.
That's how
each of them gets their time.
That's how I prefer to do things too. I like to concentrate on one project just so that I don't lose track of that project. Mainly because I know, like, from my own experience of writing different novels over the years and all that kind of stuff, if I start thinking about a different project, I might write down the idea for it, of course, because I don't want it to go poof. But if I actually concentrate, like maybe start on an outline or something like that for it, I might end up abandoning the project that I'm currently in the midst of, and I don't want to do that. I'd rather finish what I've got the energy dedicated to it at that moment. So I try to tell my subconscious mind, just hold it off for a moment, mull it around for a little bit, think about it, and maybe it'll be better when I start writing it in a month, So
maybe, sometimes a project says, get out of bed. I want you to write me now.
Right. There are those.
And you do have to do that, because if you've got that kind of energy going, if it's excited your brain so much, get up and write it.
Yes. Yeah. I will admit I've done that too. And it has worked out really well. It's just something that I don't care to do. If it's that much of a push, obviously the energy is there for a reason, so you may as well make use of it. And yeah, and those have worked out. It's like for those type of things, the project that I currently had involved, yes, it's on hold, but it ends up coming back with no problem.
Good.
It's like the other one is like fully ready to be born. It's just done. Okay, I'm out of here. Okay, now we can get back to this, no problem. So. I think I'm fairly lucky with that.
Then it's fully realized, because it's just coming back and you're able to click into the setting and the characters without a problem.
Yes, exactly. And that's one thing I try to do, before we hit our break here, because we'll have to hit our break here in a moment. But with the way that I try to do things, I try to before actually sitting down to write it, I like to have as much ducks in a row as I can as far as outlining goes. And I know a lot of people out there, they try to do the whole pantser thing. They write by the seat of their pants with no outline or barely an outline. I used to do that, and I can't. So I try to do as much of an outline as I can without dedicating the whole novel to an outline.
Everyone has their own way. My outlines probably wouldn't look like outlines to you, but they work for me.
That's what I mean. If I let myself go, the outline's going to be the novel itself. It just is the way that I am.
Well, again, referring to Anne, she hated to write the whole story out as an outline, because for her, she said, then the story's told. She's already done it, and anything she does after that is stale.
Okay.
And on the other side of that is Mercedes Lackey, who does these incredibly, intensely detailed outlines. I saw one of them that was 40 pages long, and I respect that so much.
Yes. Yeah, I do too, definitely. Well, let's go ahead and hit a break here real quick. And when we come back, I've got a couple other questions that have come in from the chat. And if anybody out there wants to call in, 260-494-3937 is the call-in number. Our Skype line is JDA Film. And as always, we're over there in the chat room at lnmradionetwork.com. If you guys want to join in, you are more than welcome to. And hopefully you guys are enjoying the show so far. I know I am. And yeah, it's been a really good one so far. So stick around, folks. We'll be back in just a few moments. Ben Franklin said, "If you do the same thing tomorrow as you did today, you're going to get the same tomorrow as you got today." Changing the world starts with you, and changing you starts with changing the way you think. Late Night in the Midlands can help. Listen to all of our shows at latenightinthemidlands.com, because things really do need to change. Have you ever heard of Audible? Audible is a website with hundreds of thousands of audiobooks. They're all high quality, easy to listen to, and, best of all, if you take advantage of a special deal that we've worked out for you, you can get one for free. That's right, a free audiobook of your choice in any genre, simply by going to audibletrial.com/openeyes and signing up for the free trial. It's simple to do, and it would support the shows that we bring to you, and hey, you get a free book out of the whole thing. So why not take advantage of it today? Go to audibletrial.com/openeyes and sign up for the trial. Open Eyes Network now airs a live simulcast on YouTube. Our YouTube channel, youtube.com/c/Open Eyes Network, features not just our live content, but other videos as well, and is always active. So now you can tune in many different ways. Open Eyes Network shows air Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time live. Be sure to visit OpenEyesNetwork.com to find easy-to-use links to get to all of the places that you want to listen to our shows. And don't forget, all of our shows will now be archived as well on YouTube.
Great fear and trembling shall seize them, even to the ends of the earth. The earth shall be hurt, and all things which are in it perish, while judgment shall come upon all, even upon all the righteous. Behold, he comes with 10,000s of his saints, to execute judgment upon them and destroy the wicked. Yet as God has appointed, so are all things brought to pass. No peace shall be to you.
The L&M Radio Network and Late Night in the Midlands depends on you, the listener. Without you, there would be no us. So help us continue to bring you the best guests with the best information, and subscribe today. Information on becoming an L&M subscriber can be found at the top of latenightinthemidlands.com. Just click the About Subscriptions tab and become part of the family while helping the truth stay alive. And while you're at it, maybe subscriptions aren't for you. A one-time donation helps as well. Click that donate button on the right side of latenightinthemidlands.com and help us help you.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Open Eyes. My name is Ira Robinson. Tonight, we're here with my guest, Jody Lynn Nye. Just a really great author, really great person, fun person to talk to. I'm having a great old time on this Friday night, and hopefully you guys are as well. 260-494-3937. That's 260-494-EYES to call in and ask any questions, give any comments, whatever you want to do. And hopefully you guys will join in with us. Chat room is over at lnmradionetwork.com as well. So, Jody, we are back. Thanks for sticking around through that break.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So before we hit the break there, we were talking about, ideas and all that kind of good stuff and our little brain babies and where they come from, all that kind of fun stuff. Now, I got to say, so with your writing style, a lot of times you go with the humor. Do you have a hard time doing the humor, or do you sit and think about what you're going to, put in as far as the humor stuff goes, or does that seem to come pretty easily to you?
That does come naturally to me.
I figured it did
I'm
from
a
the conversations.
Person. What can I say?
I was going to say, I figured it did from the conversations that I've had with you now. And from what I've heard from you before, you seem to be a pretty easy flow for kind of a person with it. So that's cool.
I think that I have a fairly gentle humor. I've seen a lot of things. Humor can be really cruel.
Yes.
But
yeah.
I tend to go for the genuine laugh, but not the fatal laugh.
yeah, exactly. Something that everybody can laugh at instead of, oh, look at that person who just fell, or, whatever. And, oh, great, their nose just got broken or whatever. It's not really that much to laugh about at that point in time, right?
Well, it's all perspective. Mel Brooks said that if I get a paper cut, that's a tragedy. But if you fall into a manhole and die, that's comedy.
Exactly. I love Mel. Okay, so again, I know you've had a pretty lucky time with things. I know some authors out there, they've got some serious horror stories when it comes to dealing with the publishing industry. Do you have any horror stories of the publishing industry yourself?
Oh.
Without getting into trouble.
That's the problem. I have had, they say you haven't arrived until you've had a really bad blurb. I've had a few bad blurbs that not only failed to describe the book, but I think drove away a bunch of readers. I've had some interesting times with a few covers. One where the artist didn't hear me correctly about the way that I wanted one of the characters to appear on the book, and accidentally put one of my friends on it who did not want to be on the book. She was really cross about that. I've had an interesting time with a couple of art directors who were not satisfied with a cover that would really have sold the book. So there were times when the appearance of the book itself failed to give it an audience that would really appreciate it. Kind of like what happened to Connie Willis with the Doomsday Book, which originally came out with a pure white cover that had a little square up in the upper right-hand corner that had a picture of a beautiful fairy tale castle. And this is absolutely not what the book is about. It's kind of dystopic and it's dark. And a lot of parents brought that book for their young daughters thinking that it would be very suitable for them. The cover is the stamp that mails the envelope, so it really needs to be accurate for
Sure,
the book.
exactly. I mean, the cover really does have to fit the voice of the novel all the way around.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why I love working with Don Mates. He is the perfect artist for me, and I've been really lucky that a lot of my publishers have, in fact, bought covers for me from him.
Oh, that's cool.
He's a terrific artist, and his stuff suits me down to the ground.
That's good. That's good. Because I know as far as covers go, the cover is the first thing that everybody sees. And a lot of people out there, unfortunately, they buy based on the cover. And so, if you got a really great cover.
It better be right.
Yeah, exactly. You've got a really great cover, but the story's crap. You might still get people liking it just because the cover is really good. But if you've got a great book.
People buying it. I don't think that you can get people to like an awful book.
Yeah. This is true. That's sort of what I was going with. Okay, so speaking of bad blurbs and that kind of thing with the haters out there, because I know you've got to have some haters. Everybody does. How How do you feel about your haters? I like to ask that question because, you know, a lot of authors, they really get impacted by the people that hate their writing or that have, you know, described them badly or things along those lines. But I've also known ones that have taken it really well, taken it in stride, and either ignore it or, you know, work with it or whatever the case may be. So what's your thoughts with your haters?
I try to stay away from them. I try not to read bad reviews because that can impact you. You can walk around for ages saying, why didn't they understand it? Why didn't they get it? Why did they post a review like that? And Amazon has made it all too easy for people who have not actually read books to review them.
Yes.
And give them 1 stars. I don't know. I prefer not to engage with them, or if I can, I'll try to explain that, well, maybe you don't know me. Here are things that you might like. But in the end, if somebody's made up their mind, I really don't know how I can change that.
Do you find that there are people that do it just for the sake of hating too?
I haven't had the experience where somebody got in my face and said, I hate you and I hate everything about you. I do know other authors who have had this happen to them, and I am not using names here.
Yeah.
But it's haunted them. It's made it very hard for them to be functional. A couple of people have more or less gone off the grid to avoid the scary ones. And a couple who have handled that, I think, really well. But it's daunting. You're trying to do something, you want to entertain. We are at base entertainers.
Yes.
And we want people to enjoy what we do. We can't make them enjoy what we do.
You're going to like it.
If they're inclined not to. But if they're open to it, we'll do the best to give them a good time and take them away from the current life that they're leading. I always say I'm the antidote to the evening news. I want to amuse people and get them to stop thinking about the horrors that can be outside there.
That's a good way to look at it, yeah.
I am specific about the evening news because I can't say, because I don't mean that life is terrible, that the world is awful. It's what you see, you know, at 6 o'clock when they come in and say, you know, thousands die, this crashed, this stopped working, this isn't going to be funded. Okay, pick up a book, get out of there for a little while, give yourself a respite. I think that's something that books do almost better than anything else.
I absolutely 100% agree. I've said so many times on this show, you know, we as human beings, we're sort of in the middle. There's one side of the road that everything dark and nasty, the hate, the anger, jealousies, the ice capades, all of those things are all over there. And then on the other side of the road, you've got all the wonderful things, you know, love and light and the love of the kids or laughter of kids and the Lucky Charms guy spreading his marshmallows everywhere. You know, all the wonderful things. And we're not in either one, but we can turn our heads and look in one direction or the other. You know, and literally for every bad thing that happens out there, there really are that many good things that happen too. And you can look at those instead of looking at the negative, you know, in life.
I do know a lot of people whose lives are very hard right now, and everything seems to be going wrong. That's one of the reasons that we offer these stories to them, is to give them something that they can enjoy, something that they can back away and say, okay, most everything is going wrong. Let's have a happy ending.
Yeah.
People used to come to me, in fact, they still do, and tell me that the Myth Adventures, Bob Asprin's book, and now then our series, then mine, came along to them when they really needed it. And I understand that. You know, there's horrible puns in it, and there are funny situations. But at the basis of that is an undying friendship. The two of them will never let each other down. That really means a lot to people, too.
It does. It does, and people can take that as a walk away from it, and hopefully maybe change their own lives too. I mean, I've known people that have read books that have walked away and said, my life is now completely different because I read this book. You know, it impacted me that much in some way that their life just radically altered, and it could have been just, you know, a simple you know, science fiction story or something like that, you know, with full of all the tropes and everything with it, you know, and yet their life was changed. It's like you never know from moment to moment when you're writing yourself, you know, you never know who's going to read it and what moment they're in when they read that book. So that's one of the things I try to do is I write to impact people in some way.
I have had an enormously great compliment paid to me that another writer said that I was her inspiration for getting into the business to start writing.
Oh, wow.
And you cannot ask for better than that.
No.
I am so flattered by that. And if I've had anything to do with her success, wow, I am proud.
That is awesome. That is awesome. I love it. With all the negativity and that kind of thing that's happening right now in the world, what do you think can be done with this negativity that we have that's going on? I mean, what are your ideas with it?
Well, I think if anything is about natural disasters holds true, that in 18 months there will be books and movies that come out that reflect off what's going on. Uh-huh. And I think everybody needs to cope the best they can if by becoming resolute, by becoming involved. That is the way you cope. If you need to remove yourself from it for your own sanity, then you have to do that. But always be aware of your own situation.
That's a good way to look at it. I like that.
I think that's the best that I can say.
I like that. So, okay, now I had a question that came in, and I don't know if you want to answer this or not, but we'll ask the question anyways.
Okay.
So, with being the prolific publishing writer that you are, how comfortably are you living with it all? Because, some people, I guess they're going with this idea of, if you're a really successful author, you must be, rich and living the life of Riley and, all the wonderful mansions that you have in tow, the entourages and all that kind of stuff.
I have no entourage. I have some people who like me very much, and I'm very lucky enough to meet many of them.
You have a cat.
I have my cat who reminds me that I am a mere mortal and not feline, which makes me way down the list of things. But there's only one Stephen King, there's only one J.K. Rowling, there's only one James Patterson, and the rest of us are somewhere below that.
There you go.
Not starving. Almost all writers have a second form of income of some kind. They either are married to somebody who has an income, or both of them are working at another job. Bob Asprin and Lynn Abbey, who were married for quite a number of years, took turns going out to get a job when they needed money. Otherwise, both of them were full-time writers like we are. And that's how they coped with it. When things began to get a little tight, Lynn was a computer programmer. She would go ahead and go back to that. Bob was a bookkeeper for IBM Corporation. He would go back to that. And everyone copes the best they can to support what they need. And it's gotten much more expensive. It will not be as easy for young writers today. And not to say it was easy. It's never easy. Every time I have someone say to me, "Oh, well, you had it easy. It was much easier to get into publishing when you got in." No, it wasn't. It was never easy. No. There were always avenues that if you were lucky and you had the right kind of material that they were looking for and you had the right timing, then you got published. But it's not an easy thing. It really isn't. And I think today, with the advent of self-publishing, a lot more people are getting their voices out there, but they're not necessarily making anything like a living.
Yeah. I know a lot of people that have gotten into self-publishing thinking that they're going to get, really rich and famous off of doing it. And there have been a couple of success stories with that kind of thing of people that have gone into self-publishing and then gotten transitioned into the traditional publishing houses from there. But that's a rarity, to say the least. I mean,
I can name about 5 who have
probably
done really
at the top
well
of my head. Yeah, that's about the most I'd be able to name too. So it's not something that is really a standard, to say the least. And I think a lot of times, I mean, I've heard from other publishers, for instance, that I've done interviews with, that a lot of times if they run across somebody that's been self-published, they won't even take a look at them because of that history that they have. So
And yet, forward-thinking publishers take a look at somebody like Hugh Howey, who wrote Wool, Larry Correa. I hesitate to mention E.L. James, but she came out of online publishing, and she has made a fortune. And the publisher that got her has sold 1 million.
And made a lot of money on it.
Yes, and movie money, too.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, I like to ask the question again because, I get a lot of people that want to be writers or that are, just coming up in the industry, and they're just searching for the most information that they can, the frantic searching and online things. And, there's a lot of people that are out there that are kind of shady that give advice when it comes to this stuff too, and they steer people into very wrong directions. And then they find out, oh, shoot, I just derailed myself completely by following this path, So
it's going to happen if you're not good at listening, or if you don't believe the people that are telling you the problems that they've experienced, because everybody goes into this with the stars in their eyes saying, sure, yes, and I'm going to have this, and all of these things, and I can't wait for the movie money to start rolling in. I'm an accountant's daughter, so I have been taught to be frugal from an early age.
There you go. Yeah.
So we save everything we can. We live below our means, and we keep in mind that things can happen. So I advise people not to quit the day job, and particularly because it is so hard to get and so expensive to get health insurance on your own, to stay with the job if you are getting benefits. A lot of people go work for Starbucks because they give health benefits to everybody.
Yeah.
Or at least they did. I don't quote me on this at the moment, but
I think they still do, from what I know. Yeah.
I thought they still did, and it's not a bad job. But you have to keep in mind that you need to have a work-life balance. And one of the things that you have to be aware of is if you get a nice big check with lots of zeros on it, even 4 zeros, even 3 zeros, you have to set aside a minimum of a third and be smart, half of it for the IRS, because it's going to happen. Some people that I have known and loved have forgotten to pay their taxes, have forgotten to save enough, and when the time came with that great big check, they spent it, and then they didn't have anything to give to the IRS, and the government is not very patient about that.
They don't like that too well. They're slow about giving you what you've got.
And it's hard to catch up.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
And then you have that mental thing dogging you that, oh my God, I owe this money. I have to write. I can't write. I'm so upset.
That writer's
block. Quite understandable. So I try to head people off and say, if you get a great big check, buy yourself something so that you remember having had that great big check.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's something small. I collect paperweights for each of the books I write. It's a thing. I started doing that. It's silly. Friend and another friend who's a writer and I both do that.
It fits the theme.
It's like that. And then set aside your tax money. Set aside what you can for your retirement, because most of us are going to get old.
Yep.
And then you can spend the rest on your bills. But please, 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 please don't forget to pay your taxes.
With the money thing in mind, as far as marketing goes, do you do a lot of marketing yourself, or do you rely on your publisher to do most of your marketing for you?
I help out as I can.
Okay.
Baen Books has a wonderful lady working for them who interacts with the publishers and does some of the publicity, works with trade shows like the Library Association shows. And all of us are out there tweeting and Facebooking and blogging as best we can to talk about our books. There's more and more being put onto the back of the writer, even though what we are good at is writing. And if all things were perfect, that's what we would be doing. So we take on quite a lot of the publicity.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know for me, I relatively suck at marketing comparatively, and I wish I was much better at it, but I'm learning the process as I go. And I do advise people that have asked me that question myself to learn marketing, learn what you need to do to reach the customers yourself, because they are customers, learn what to do to reach them yourself. And then if the publisher is doing things on their end, it's a bonus, but just kind of like focus on it yourself so that you can get that drive going. And I think for most authors, they really can do it because social media is really easy to navigate these days compared to what it was, 10, 15 years ago. Everybody's on social media in some way. So
quite a lot of people, some people have resisted in the last couple of months. Two people that I had said that they would never be on Facebook are finally on Facebook. But this is also where conventions are really useful. My husband and I wrote a book that is a compilation of columns that we did for the SFWA Bulletin called Pros and Cons, for young writers who don't realize the benefits of going to conventions because it's publicity for you. And if you are at all comfortable with talking to the public, a con is a good place to be.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I've never been to one myself as far as an author goes. I've been to them as a goer, but never there as an author myself. But I definitely would love to do it. I know I have one that's coming to my area here next year, and I'm already gearing myself up, looking to get myself into it. So
write to the ConCom, tell them what you can do.
Yep, exactly. I've sent them a couple of letters and hoping that they get back to me in time. So, but they have a lot of people.
You always have a second string to your bow. You are a writer. Many people are writers. You have a radio show.
Exactly. Hey, I can give you guys some good publicity as far as the con goes too.
Or you could do interviews at the convention.
See, that's what I thought. That's what I thought about doing is doing exactly that. Doing both the book stuff, advertising my books, of course, but also getting involved with the writers that are there, the publishers that are there, and I think that it would just be amazing to do. I would love the opportunity to do it.
Right. There are so many things that are useful about going to conventions, and part of it is meeting your public, but the interaction with other writers. Because if you mostly write alone and you don't ever talk to other writers, if you never get out there, you're meeting your peer group, and they have had some of the same problems that you have. They may have some solutions. They may have some ideas. They might be staffing an anthology. There are a lot of reasons to get involved with a convention, especially because especially if it's local to you, these are the people that are your primary market. And especially for science fiction conventions. I've started going lately to several Comic Cons with a group called Bard's Tower that's led by a man named Alexei Vandenberg. And they bring authors to Comic Cons, which happens to have a stunning number of book readers also. And they have been really happy to see us, which is fabulous.
The gaming conventions are really good with it too, because a lot of people that are into gaming are into fantasy reading and science fiction reading.
Well, that's where I started out.
There you go. Yeah.
Gen Con.
Which is a great con. That's an awesome one. Dragon Con's fantastic too. I love Dragon Con.
I live halfway between Chicago and Lake Geneva, Wisconsin.
So you're kind of right there, right in the forefront too. I mean, there's a lot of different conventions that go on in the Chicagoland area.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
We're over here in Fort Wayne, Indiana, so not that far away from you.
Mm-hmm.
So, with all this in mind, now I again, because this show here is dedicated to writers and the readers. As far as writers goes, do you have any advice that you like to give to writers as far as how to overcome writer's block? Because that's a problem with a lot of people. I don't have it myself. I've found some ways to get past it myself, although I used to suffer from it horribly. But, do you have any advice as far as like writer's block and that kind of thing goes to just, plow through it?
No, don't plow through it. Writer's block usually indicates that your subconscious is telling you that there's something wrong with what you're writing.
There you go.
It might be that you have a blocked line of inquiry, that your plot isn't going to work for some reason, or that you have your characters doing something unrealistic. So put it down and walk away from it. Go clear out the refrigerator, empty a closet, go for a drive, do something that is physical but mindless, and let your subconscious work on it. And then go back and look at your work. And usually you can find out where the blockage is, because that's usually what works for me, is putting it down, walking away, and even if you do something else, answer your mail, clean the house, babysit, do something that is profoundly not what you're writing,
yeah,
and give yourself a chance. I say the same thing when you're coming back to do revisions, is look at it with fresh eyes. And that will usually tell you where your problem is. And if you don't find it, then read it from the beginning. And if even that doesn't work, start writing something else, work on something else.
There you go.
And that might help you clear too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like when I do revisions, for instance, I don't even touch it for about a month or so after I've finished writing it. I set it aside and go to another project and I let it rest. I don't even take a look at it. It's done. It doesn't exist at the moment. It's not there, For me with writer's block, I found that most of the time when I end up getting something like that is when the stuff that I'm writing is either not to my best ability, or I've found myself getting a little bit bored in a section or something like that. So I have to go back a little bit and reread it and say, okay, I was wrong to put this in here. Maybe I can rewrite this chapter in a different voice or a different way, and maybe there's something new that needs to come out and it belonged there, but I just didn't get it there or something like that.
Right. A book shouldn't have boring bits in it.
Yeah, exactly. Any boring bits I cut out, that's for the editing process to be cut out. So, but most of the time when I have writer's block, that's what I found, is that it's a section of the book that I've found myself having one trouble with or another. And it's because I just didn't give myself the honesty of knowing, okay, this part that I wrote was boring and it needs to go and I need to rewrite it, or it needs to skip this part altogether. This scene doesn't belong, or whatever the case may be. And it's like my subconscious is telling me, this is crap. Don't put this out,
When I teach my writer's workshop, a lot of young people also bog their books down with things that they have invented for their worlds that they love and they adore, but it doesn't move the story. So really out it goes. It has to go because it will interfere with the flow. And it's hard, but I always say save it for something else.
Sure, or you can integrate that kind of thing into the story at a later time, or somehow in the book it can be integrated in, but don't just sit there and describe, hey, by the way, the cars in this world look exactly like this and this and this, and they were invented by blah, blah, blah. Well, if that doesn't matter to the story, why is that there,
Exactly.
You can maybe have it as a part of a dialogue at some point in time and just say, by the way, that's a really nice car that you've got there. Who, where'd you get that from? Or something like that, but make it relevant to the discussion that's going on there, or the part of the story. And it turns out better that way, I think. Mm-hmm. Makes it flow a lot better.
You can add texture, but it shouldn't detract from anything.
That's a good way to put it. Texture. Yeah, that's the exact word that you should use. That's perfect. With writing now, again, focusing on people that are writing, do you recommend trying to get your first novel published? or maybe write a couple and give yourself time to practice the craft a little bit before you try seeking out to get things published? I mean, how would you recommend that kind of thing?
Read what's out there, know what's out there. Know who the most likely publisher is that's going to take your book, and start sending things out. Yes, you can send out your first manuscript and you'll probably get it back, but that's okay, because while it's out, you're going to be writing something that is not attached to that story. Because if you don't sell book one, there isn't going to be a book two. You might as well write a different project. Then you start sending that one out too. And if that one comes back, you've learned something, but you've also learned more about your craft at the same time. And you should always be sending things out, and you should always be expecting to see them again for a while. And one day, instead of getting back your thick envelope, you'll get a skinny one, and it will be an offer. And that begins the negotiations. So you should just keep trying. There are small presses out there that do a really good job, and they're looking for books. On Facebook, there's a couple of pages that have open markets for both books and short stories, and you should look at those. And they're looking for material. They're looking for people to publish. Some of them don't pay very much, but that's up to you to decide whether or not you want to take that chance. Working for one of the big ones would be great. Having the opportunity to publish for a small press actually gives you information for your resume, an entry for your resume for a big publisher to say, I have been edited. I can take you critiquing my work without going off at the least suggestion that you want to take out one of my semicolons.
That's a big one right there. Yes.
Oh, yeah. Can you be edited? Can you take it? there are people who say in their letters that, don't change anything, it is perfect. And the publishers are all too happy to say, okay, if it's that perfect, then we would go broke, because if we publish your book, I saw this on the wall of Ace Books once, then people would only want to demand that, and we would be unable to publish anything in the future, and we would have to close the publishing houses, and our children will starve. So, yeah, there's humility involved in that, and sometimes a whole lot of humility lessons, but keep going. You have to have a fairly thick skin to get through it.
You do, yeah.
So you're just going to have to keep trying.
That's a really great point. I'm glad that you brought that up, because a lot of times with the editing or the publishing process, they might encounter an author that they're interested in, but then the author's attitude makes them go right out the window. It's like the author might have written a really good story and they'd be interested, but then upon the first starting of the negotiations, I've seen people that have had, their whole thing's derailed because they walk in with this attitude of, stars in their eyes and they're a superstar and they don't, everything's right and in the rain and everything's perfect. Don't mess with it. Don't touch it. Don't even look at it. Just publish it. And they find themselves quickly going right out the door,
Oh, yes. Yes. By the time a publisher comes back to you with an offer, it means that they have invested money in you already.
Right.
If they do an initial read on your book, Sue Stone, who used to work for both Ace and Harlequin, said that she gave something the 2-page test, literally the 2 pages. If it grabbed her, then she would read 20 pages throughout the rest of the manuscript, more of the beginning, something in the middle, and the end, to make sure that they could actually conclude a story.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Then it goes to a reader, who is somebody who is paid between $25 and $50 to read the book all the way through and write a detailed report saying, buy this book, don't buy this book, or maybe, and here's why. And the ones that get the yes, then the editor actually reads those all the way through and decides if that is something that they want for their line, because the readers are specifically with knowledge of that particular house's likes and dislikes and what their market is. So if you have received an offer of do these things and we'll take this, they've already invested time and money in you. And to say, don't change anything, I will not do any of these things that you want me to because it is perfect, is a surefire way that not only will they reject that book, but anything else you ever send them, because you're too hard to work with. It's a negotiation. It's an interaction.
And you might find yourself in the same boat with other publishers, because those publishers speak to other publishers, don't they?
Yes, they do. There used to be something called the Thursday night poker game.
There you go.
Where the editors got together and chatted. And whenever they moved from house to house, they were still in the business, so they knew each other, and they had horror stories.
So take that advice in mind, you guys. Make sure that you,
behave like a professional.
Yeah, be a professional. Exactly. Have the humility and be a professional. Know that the craft that you're doing, it's no different than a doctor or a retail person or anything along those lines. It's a job, and you're there at a job interview essentially when you're in the negotiation process, aren't you?
Oh yes, yeah. Approach with humility. Approach respectfully. And you don't know these people. What you are in essence doing is asking for a job. So
we're almost out of time here. This time has flown, to say the least. And I've loved having you on. I definitely want you to come back in the future if you're willing.
I'd love to.
Awesome. I want to make sure that you have enough time to get out your website information, where people can find your books, all of that kind of stuff. Tell us about your new book again for those that are just tuning in, and where they can find it and all that kind of good stuff.
Moonbeam, written by me and Travis Taylor, is a young adult science fiction story about a young woman who is joining an elite group of young people who are doing science on the moon. This takes place about 75 or 100 years in the future. And their big project, which is fantastic, is building a space telescope, a radar telescope, out of a crater. Most of a telescope is just the radar dish itself, and the feed horn is the technical part of it, which is very easy to construct. So they go out to the far side of the moon to design this device, clear the crater, build the habitat that's attached to it, get everything going, And they discover when they are too far from home to get back easily, a coronal mass ejection, a sunspot, is shooting radiation directly towards them. And their habitat is not finished. They have to save their own lives. At the same time, the home office, the Armstrong City, which is their domicile, the one city on the moon, is also having a problem, and no one can come and get them. So they have to use their ingenuity and work together to survive. It's a pretty good story. Our protagonist is a young woman from Iowa, and her 5 companions all have to work together, and they are from all over the United States. So we have a little of everything. And I think that you'll find it interesting and fun. My website is www.jodylynnnye.com, JODYLYNNNYE. And I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, and please come up to me and talk to me at conventions. I run the 2 days writers workshop at DragonCon every year. I'm still looking for 6 students to fill out this year's roster. So if you're coming to DragonCon, think about it. I'm on runs on Thursdays and Fridays. And I love to hear from people. So, check in with me on Facebook or Twitter, or drop me a note through my website. I'd love to hear from you.
Sounds great, Jody. We've got about a minute and a half left here, and I'd like to give you a chance. Any kind of final words that you'd like to get out to the listeners out there? Any final advice or anything along those lines that you want to give?
Oh, wow. Allow yourself peace. I know that things are hard in the world, but there's always some sort of respite. Talk to a friend, read a book, pet a cat. Look at the beauties that we have all around us. There are marvelous things, and I know that it seems really rough when news is full of tragedy and disaster, but the best thing that we have in this world is each other. So I believe in that.
That's a great way to put it, too. I love it. Thank you so much for being here tonight, Jody. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, Ira.
You're a beautiful lady and a beautiful soul, and thank you for doing the writings that you've been doing and entertaining us with everything that you do. So have a wonderful night.
You too. Thank you.
You bet. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So there you guys go. Jody Lynn Nye. Hopefully you guys enjoyed tonight's show. I definitely did. This has been a really good experience for me. And hopefully you as well. So until next time, we're going to be live again on Monday, 7:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here wherever you're listening to this now. You can listen to that then. So make sure you guys tune on in. If you guys want to go to the archive of this show, it's going to be at our website, openeyesnetwork.com. You guys can also find it on YouTube at youtube.com/C/OpenEyesNetwork, Facebook.com/OpenEyesNetwork. And if you want to send me an email, you can send it to feedback@openeyesnetwork.com. Notice there's a theme there, Open Eyes Network, on all of these different places. We're going to make sure to have Jody's information linked up on the archives of all of these shows. So if you guys need to get the links or anything along those lines, head on over there and take a look. And just do a click. Simple as that. If you guys are interested in my own writings, I do have my writings available on my website. It's originalworlds.com. Make sure you guys check it out. I also give a lot of writing advice, writing prompts. I do Writing Prompt Wednesday, and just helping you guys out to, fulfill your dreams of the writer process and all of that kind of good stuff. And check it out. Originalworlds.com. Don't forget, I do have my book. My new book is coming out as well. Funnily enough, on July 3rd of this year. That's called Haunted: Finding an Explanation for the Unknown. Go into the history of ghosts, how the world has looked at the ghosts and the paranormal side of things, all the way from ancient Mesopotamia on up into modern day times and the different cultures that we have. So check it out. It's an interesting nonfiction book, and I think you guys will like it a lot. I am in the midst of writing Penitence. I'm almost done with it now. That's my new fiction novel, and hopefully that will be done here in the next month or so. We'll see what ends up happening. But anyways, until next time, keep safe out there. Have fun. Thank you so much, as always, for listening, and we'll talk to you again soon.